All right, welcome. So today we're tackling a topic which at first might seem a little tinfoil hat-ish, but I think it's a topic that we need to discuss and take seriously. So you hear people throwing this around. You hear, most vocally, you hear Bill Maher saying this regularly, that he doesn't think Trump's going to leave office even if he loses. And it's easy to dismiss when Bill Maher is saying it. And we're talking about people who have the credentials to, you want to stop and listen to them and go, oh, this person actually has some information that's going on here. So let's take a look at the situation. So Donald Trump has already been setting the stage to be able to claim that the election is invalid, that it was not pure, there was cheating going on, and so that his loss is not actually a loss. Like, let's remember, when he won, he still claimed the whole thing was rigged, right? He couldn't even just win and win. He still came out and said, no, I would have won even more if the whole thing hadn't been rigged against me. So it's very reasonable to think that when he actually loses, that he will do the exact same thing, because he did it when he won. Right? He even did it when he won. So what do we have here? The 2020 election will be totally rigged if mail-in voting is allowed to take place, and everyone knows it. So much time is taken talking about foreign influence, but the same people won't even discuss mail-in election corruption, right? So first of all, here's the problem. And you can look at my other videos, you can look at work other people have done. Mail-in balloting is actually very, very secure. There are very, very few cases where mail-in balloting is used for fraud. And if you think about the logistics that you would have to go through as a country to defraud with mail-in voting, it's hard because there's so many different ballots. You'd have to figure out who's living at what address, which isn't too hard, but then you'd have to figure out if those people are already going to be sending in a ballot, because if they start getting double ballots for the same person, obviously that's going to raise some flags. So they'd have to know where people live. They'd have to know who's voting and who's not voting. And then on top of that, as I've mentioned before, inside of one city, there might be 6 or 7 different districts that have different ballots. So this idea that other countries are going to go create a bunch of ballots and then flood our country with it, that's not how it would work, right? And if you pay attention, the way that countries try to interfere now is with computers. They don't do it with paper mail-in ballots. So it doesn't make any sense. Trump doesn't care, though, because those are facts. So what he's saying here, he's laying this groundwork that he can use no matter what happens, because it's estimated that approximately 1 out of 4 people in this presidential election are going to vote using mail-in balloting, right? The last 2 states I've lived in, California and Washington, super easy. You just get a ballot, you fill it out, you send it in weeks ahead of time, you get it in there, right? Trump doesn't like that. So if 25% of the population is voting by mail-in ballot, that's a large enough number that he can claim, even if he loses relatively big, he can claim, oh, it's because of the fraud from the mail-in ballots. And this, you'll see, this is where the crack is coming from. It might sound like last time when he won and he was complaining about it, you might go, oh, what was the big deal? He was just more hot air. You'll see here in this video, this time around, it's not just hot air, it's a big deal. Okay, so he's setting the stage. He's planting the seed of doubt into people's minds so that they're all ready to go. When he comes out and starts claiming, oh, the mail-in ballots were fraudulent, people are already like, yeah, we knew this was going to happen. You've been telling us this for months. They're going to be all ready to go with it. And so let's take a look at what he said in person.
I don't like to lose. I don't lose too often. I don't like to lose.
But are you gracious?
You don't know until you see. It depends. I think mail-in voting is going to rig the election. I really do.
Are you suggesting that you might not accept the results of the election?
I have to see. Look, Hillary Clinton asked me the same thing.
No, I asked you the same thing in the debate.
There is a tradition in this country. In fact, one of the prides of this country is the peaceful transition of power, and that no matter how hard fought a campaign is, that at the end of the campaign, that the loser concedes to the winner. Not saying that you're necessarily going to be the loser or the winner, but that the loser concedes to the winner and that the country comes together in part for the good of the country. Are you saying you're not prepared now to commit to that principle?
What I'm saying is that I will tell you at the time. I'll keep you in suspense.
Well,
okay?
Chris.
And you know what? She's the one that never accepted it.
I agree.
She never accepted her loss, and
But
she looks like a fool.
Can you give a direct answer? You will accept the election?
I have to see. look, I have to see. No, I'm not going to just say yes. I'm not going to say no. And I didn't last time either.
So we can see their door left wide open, about as wide open as you could get, unless he just came out and said, well, if I win, I'll accept it. If I lose, I'll contest it, right? Short of that, this is basically what we're going to get. The door's wide open. He's saying he doesn't like mail-in ballots. 25% of the ballots, at least, are going to be mail-in ballots. Hopefully more, considering the people are probably not going to be able to show up in person and vote. So hopefully there's a lot of mail-in ballots coming in, and he's set the stage, right? It's all set. He's just going to keep hammering that between now and November, when he's going to step up and say, you know what, if it hadn't been for mail-in ballots, I would have won. So I'm not going anywhere, which again, at this moment sounds like tinfoil hat territory, but as you're about to see, not even a little bit tinfoil hat territory. This is like the reality that is being set up. So let's take a look. Okay, so there's a group called the Transition Integrity Project. And what happened was these group of people got together and they asked the question. They wanted to seriously answer the question, what happens if Trump does not accept the election results, right? Now, I get it. The first thing you think of is, oh, it's a bunch of super left-wing Democrats got together and they're just gonna, they're gonna go through the different versions of Orange Man bad, Orange Man is a dictator, and they're just gonna bash him the whole time. That is not what happened. What we got was a group of professionals who know what they're talking about, right? So they had an individual with a 30-year career in the Army, ended as a colonel, so like legit officer, right? He like knows what's going on with that kind of stuff. And basically what they got together was they came together and had war games, right? Which sounds very ominous. Basically what you're doing is you're running a simulation. Now, this wasn't a simulation in a computer. This was a simulation that played out over a period of time with these individuals essentially playing a role-playing game, which makes it sound kind of trivial. What happens is they tried to figure out the different scenarios, and then they got these people together and said, what are you going to do? So you ask that colonel from the Army, okay, this is the game so far. It's your turn. What is the Army going to do about this? And then that individual, having actually known something about the Army, could give a response and say, well, I think this is what would happen. And then they had lawyers there. So certain aspects, you would ask the lawyers and say, okay, what are you supposed to do now? And they'd say, well, from a law perspective, this is what would happen. And the results of this game were not good at all. Okay, so this is where we move from that territory of tinfoil hat into, oh, this actually looks like what's going on right now, right? As we mentioned, the table is being set, right? As the first part of this video was, the stage is being set for exactly this scenario that's going on. So what did they have to say about it, right? Remember, Democrats and Republicans on this team, and they basically all came to the same conclusion. The group, which included Democrats and Republicans, gathered to game out possible results of the November election, grappling with questions that seem less far-fetched by the day. What if President Trump refuses to concede a loss, as he publicly hinted recently he might do? How far could he go to preserve his power? And what if Democrats refuse to give in? So this is Roseboro Brooks, a Georgetown law professor and former Defense Department official. So legit, these are legit individuals that we're talking about, right? All of our scenarios ended in both street-level violence and political impasse. The law is essentially, it's almost helpless against a president who's willing to ignore it. And this is the problem that we're running into, right? We've had norms for the history of our country, but and some will argue that those norms were decaying over time. Yeah, okay, there's an argument to be made there, but this is a whole different situation. We are seeing a president who has zero concern about norms. Everything is transactional. Everything is about him. So he doesn't care, oh, this is a tradition that's been going on for centuries. Oh, this is a tradition that's going to break down our democracy if I don't follow it. No, he'll break it in a second if it's going to give him the slight advantage. So he is that president who is willing to ignore the rules. He is already setting the stage for this. So their game envisioned a dark 11 weeks between Election Day and Inauguration Day, one in which Trump and his Republican allies used every apparatus of government, the Postal Service, state lawmakers, the Justice Department, federal agents, and the military to hold on to power. We're already seeing some of this now, and we're not even close to Election Day. We're already seeing these very institutions be degraded and repurposed for uses that most of the American people aren't real happy about. So to hold on to power, and Democrats took to the courts and the streets to try to stop it. Okay, so that's what we got. So they issued a frightening warning. A close election this fall is likely to be contested, and there are few guardrails to stop a constitutional crisis, particularly if Trump flexes the considerable tools at his disposal to give himself an advantage. We have already seen this. We have seen the DOJ completely corrupted with William Barr as his right-hand man, and they are willing to do anything to make sure that Trump becomes a dictator. Both Trump and Barr seem fully invested in that idea that Trump should be a full-fledged dictator, right? Now, that might seem extreme that I'm saying that now, but look at what he is doing with these. He's doing the exact things that occurred in this simulation, except he's doing it now. He doesn't even need to do it yet, right? They simulated this happening after an election that he lost. We haven't even had it yet, and we're already seeing these things start to happen. So they're saying a close election will likely fall. A close election is likely to be contested because this is exactly what's going to happen. There's going to be a few states where the electoral votes didn't go Trump's way. And he's going to say, we need recounts because all of those mail-in ballots were unacceptable. They were wrong. They were counterfeit. None of them count. And if you throw out those few states, all of a sudden the electoral votes go the other way. And he's going to say, yeah, I'm not going to recognize this vote because I think that in this state and this state and this state, the mail-in ballots were fraudulent. And so we're not going to acknowledge those. We're not going to count those. And then what do? It becomes very, very difficult, especially when you got, he's been putting his minions in place for years now. He's been firing all the people who have any sense of ethics or responsibility to the democracy of this country and putting in place people like William Barr, who would love to see Trump become full-fledged dictator. Nils Gilman, a historian who leads research at a think tank, said, he doesn't have to win the election. He just has to create a plausible narrative that he didn't lose, right? And that's exactly what he's already setting the stage in with this mail-in ballot, because enough people vote by mail-in ballot that you can create doubt in the people who want to believe him, right? Most people aren't going to believe it, but if you desperately want to believe what Trump is saying and he gives you an excuse, we've seen they take it every time. They take it and they ask for more. All right, and here, this is upsetting because if you think about it, the very reaction that this kind of behavior is likely to get is exactly the kind of thing that, according to these games, is going to make things worse. So Edward Luce, U.S. editor of the Financial Times, the more demonstrations there were, the more demands for recounts, the more legal challenges there were, the more funerals for democracy were held, the more Trump came across as the candidate of stability. Right? So it's that same law and order argument that he's making right now. I'm for law and order. Things are a mess. I'm trying to bring it back to normalcy. He's doing it right now. He's just going to be doing it more later. We're just going to see this ramp up all the way till January, and everyone's just going to wait to see if he leaves or not. Right? So that retired Army colonel I was talking about, Larry Wilkerson, here's what he had to say. The Constitution really has been a workable document in many respects because we have had people who more or less adhered to the code of conduct. That seems to no longer be the case. That changes everything. Yes, it is written on a piece of paper that we have stored away in an airtight container. But if you just ignore those words, he can do whatever he wants, essentially. And he's got Barr and his people are already figuring all of this out, right? Just like they're figuring it out in Portland and they're figuring it out in these different places. What exactly can we do? What exactly can we get away with? So this is something that we need to be looking out for now. This is not the kind of thing that we want to be reacting to after it happens. We need to raise awareness about this now and go, look, we need to keep this from happening. Because if you're reactive, you're going to be acting too late because they are not waiting. They're not waiting to plan this out until they're doing it. They're planning it right now. They're running their experiments in Portland and now New York, where they're nabbing people off the streets. They're trying to stop any kind of protest taking place because they don't want there to be an uproar. They are figuring it all out right now. So, sometimes you wonder, like, when something happens and then, like, immediately within hours, a lawsuit was put into place, and you wonder, how did the lawyers act that fast? They didn't. They knew what was going to happen. They prepared all the paperwork and they were ready to go. The other side, the side that might not leave office, they are already preparing everything, right? I mean, just look at Trump and Barr. Tell me they're not, right? Giuliani, all these people, you think they're not already preparing the paperwork and preparing everything they need to play out this little game, but in real life, they are doing it right now. So It's good that we have people like the Transition Integrity Project figuring this out so that the other side can be prepared to try to keep democracy in place. So I know it seems a little tinfoil hattish when you first start looking at it, but please pay attention, think about it, and just look at what's happening right now. Look at what's happening in the streets. Look at what's happening at the government level. Look what's happening with the pandemic. All these different things, you start to go, yeah, this actually is exactly what you would do if you were going to try to not leave office. And we need to be prepared for that reality. I hope it does not happen. But, let's think about who we're talking about here. All right, thanks for checking out that video. So join the stream Saturday night on YouTube, 6 p.m. Pacific, or head over to Twitch. Follow me over there. We'll stream over there and have a little bit more fun, a little bit more relaxed setting where we hit the news, but also have some laughs and some fun at the same time. So, yeah, thanks for watching the video. We'll see you in the future.